A very good morning again, ladies and gentlemen, to all those joining us online. Welcome again to this second edition or second session of the 16th CRF conference hosted by the Ghana Registration Services Bureau. We are moving to our next panel discussion of the day. The topic will be partnering across government in delivery of registry services, and our panelists will be looking at challenges and opportunities. The discussions will focus on areas such as linking businesses and taxpayer registration. They will also focus on building whole government registries, and they will also focus on discussing the digital inclusion and shared e-government services across issues like e-payments, regulation, and authentications. To moderate this discussion will be Ms. Patricia Opoka, who is the Manager Document Registration at the Ghana Registration Services Bureau. Patricia will take over this discussion and welcome our speakers. Over to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Dennis. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone on this call. Today we are proud to host three ladies who are doing great work in the government registries. We shall discuss what the different entities have done in partnering across government agencies in delivering registry services. It's a known fact from our users that citizens and businesses are demanding services, real-time services with less steps and requirements, and the need to move from one office to another to get this and that done. Yet all the information, the same information, is provided to the same government. So that's the focus for today. The first speaker will be the Registrar General, Mercy Kainowisho. She became the Registrar General of Uganda Registration Services Bureau in December 2020. Prior to that, she was a Director of Intellectual Property, Director Business. She was a Manager of Intellectual Property at URSB. Prior to joining URSB, she was a State Attorney at Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. And she's a qualified, experienced advocate of the High Court with 15 years specializing in intellectual property, business law, project management, oil and gas leadership, and general management. She has a master's degree from the University of Turin in Italy, an MBA from the Makerere Business School, a degree from Makerere University. She has done a lot of writing. She has a number of publications, both in domestically and internationally, on different articles on professional life and social life. She's a Rotarian. She's the past president of a Rotary Club in Uganda. She's the vice president of the World Intellectual Property Coordination Committee. She's a member of the Human Capital Committee of ARIPO, the Africa Regional Intellectual Property, and she was the chairperson of the selection committee for the Director General of ARIPO. She has received several awards. She was she was named among the best female lawyers, and then also influential women in Africa by African Diversity and Inclusion Center. She's a member of Uganda Law Society, East African Law Society, Federation of Women Lawyers Association, and she's passionate about mentoring young people and leadership, amongst other things. We welcome you, our dear Registrar General. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia Polka, for that humble introduction. Good morning to you, our special delegates following online. I take this opportunity to present a paper that should be projected by the technical team. Okay, kindly start from the first page. Yes, the topic of presentation is partnering across government in delivery of registry services or registration services, and we're looking at the challenges and opportunities. If you can go to the next slide. When we talk about business facilitation services, we consider a number of variables, and these include business registration, which is ably done by the corporate or business registries of every nation or country. Then the business licensing, which is done by the licensing authorities with regard to the trading licenses, taxation, among others. Then the business taxation, which is ably done in Uganda by the Uganda Revenue Authority. And I'm glad one of the commissioners, a well-known lawyer, Patience, is going to make a presentation on this. And then the business survival and continuity. And these are interdependent, that a company exists and it has to be licensed for purposes of operational ability. If it makes a profit, then it has to be taxed and it has to survive. As we discuss this paper, I would like to also appreciate what companies are looking for as corporate registries, as business registries. When we are serving these clients, what are they looking out for? The clients or companies are looking for reduced cost of doing business. They're looking for ease of access to information. They're looking at simplification of processes, standardization, and sustainability. And that is why our registries are encouraged to look at what companies are looking for or what the clients want. With regard to business registration, our core principles as Uganda Registration Services Bureau, an institution that is charged with registering of businesses and companies, we're looking at accessibility, easing the accessibility of our services, whether physically or online, and simplification. And this is a journey that we embarked on over 5 years ago to enable accessibility and simplification of our processes. The current systems that we have in as far as business registration is concerned include the business registration system, whose purpose is designed for primary registration and focuses on name reservation, registration of new business names, partnerships, incorporation of companies, and filing amendments such as resolutions and necessary forms. The second system that we have is the online registration and filing system, which system focuses on filing annual returns. And then the electronic document management system, which is specifically for storage and houses both historical data for the old companies. We have companies as old as 1910 and up to the new registrations that we receive on a daily. When we talk about partnering across government agencies, we must emphasize the integrated services. And these integrated services can be categorized in different classifications: the systems integration, data integration, private and public integration, which is also enabled by the communication and coverage. When it comes to systems integration, we're looking at automation of our services, digitization, the business process reengineering, and also focusing on unique identification or identifiers of these businesses. Then the data integration services are very key for running our business registries because they promote access to business information, data integration, the software and hardware processes, the information products that we have, and the electronic document management systems. And the other category of integrated services is the private and public sector integration. We have seen one-stop shop business models being used by different registries. And in Uganda, we use the one-stop for business facilitation, where we have all key agencies that are in charge of licensing and business sustainability sitting together in one place physically, but also they're all electronic platforms for these services, for the one-stop business registration services. We have gone ahead to enter joint operations, especially joint programs like the well-known taxpayer register expansion program that was embarked on in 2014 and has seen many businesses register, get the tax identification numbers, as well as the trading licenses, because business identification and business legal assistance is very key for the national development and planning and strategic decisions. We have also gone ahead to enter strategic partnerships and synergize with the government agencies and the private sector to enable and ease the registration services. But this is also enabled by the enhanced joint operations, joint campaigns, the mobile registrations, the registry, the URSB offers mobile registration services across the country, and the Uganda Revenue Authority has done this ably as well, going around the country to bring the services closer to the people, because access to services is very key and core on our agenda. And the other aspect is the online and physical applications and registrations promotion. And this brings on board the integrated services that make it easy for businesses to formalize as much as possible. The current integration with a number of agencies, the first agencies, the National Identification Registration Authority. Here, this is an agency that gives birth, death registration certificates, but also the national identification certificates, which are very critical because as registries, we must know the owners of these businesses, as well as the identities of these businesses. So we use this integration to verify the owners of these businesses, and also it supports the business, the beneficial ownership information. I had a colleague from Kenya this morning also making presentation and referring to the beneficial ownership responsibility. And this is a role that the company registries or corporate registries must continue to play to promote transparency and accountability. The Uganda Revenue Authority integration is important, and we are linked to the system for purposes of payment, verifications, and also to bridge the potential revenue leakages or gaps. It is also used for tax identification and numbers issuance. We also link to the National Social Security Fund for purposes of employee registrations, because these businesses and companies that we register employ a number of employees, and the National Social Security Fund integration helps to pick the information on these from the register. Then we have the Uganda Investment Authority, whose integration is specifically related to the one-stop shop or one-stop center functionality for issuance of the investment licenses to investors, both local and international or foreign. We have put up a Uganda Business Facilitation Center. This is a 16-floor building with 12 floors up and 4 floors of the parking. And this is to be occupied by the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, the Uganda Investment Authority, the Capital Markets Authority, and all entities of government that relate or impact on business facilitation, from business registration to business licensing, business sustainability, and more. And this is going to enable the ease of doing business and access to our services and information in view of working together as government and the private sector. The impact of integration is appreciated, and we feel it in our registries or corporate registers. And these include the optimization of business processes, reducing the cost of doing business, attraction of investment, service excellence, addressing the demand management, the people management, and the technology management, as well as the costs of doing all these business registration services. And so we must invest in integration of our services because of the impact it makes in our economies. I want to take this opportunity to thank you and for listening in, and I will be ready to take on any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Registrar General, for your insightful presentation. To the members on this call, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. Now we're going to the second presenter, who is Miss Patience Rubagumya. She's the director. She's a Commissioner Legal Affairs and Border Affairs at Uganda Revenue Authority, a position she has held since 2015. She joined URA in 2000 and has held several positions and has grown through the ranks. She's an advocate of the High Court, a public prosecutor appointed public prosecutor by the Director of Public Prosecutions. She's a Commissioner of Oaths, and she received an award from the President for her outstanding performance. She's a holder of a master's degree from Scotland. She's a member of ICSA UK, and she undertook her undergraduate at Makerere University. She's a member of Uganda Law Society, East African Law Society, and the various tax bodies where they belong. Patience, over to you to tell us what URA has done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Patricia, for that introduction. First of all, I would like to thank Uganda Registration Services Bureau for the extension that was extended to Uganda Revenue Authority, and to congratulate you and all the organizers for this successful conference. There's so much talk around that, so we congratulate you on that. But also to thank the Uganda Registration Services Bureau for the partnership that we had with Uganda Revenue Authority. And this is the topic that really I'm going to talk about this morning. It has been one of the things where we have seen as Uganda Revenue Authority, we have got a lot of benefits, but then also benefits that are tangible, benefits that have actually translated to revenue collection in terms of going forward. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for the invitation. So I will now turn to my presentation. If the technical team can screen it, yes. So like Madam Mercy has said, really we are here to talk about a partnership across government in delivery of the registry services. We are really focusing on the challenges and the opportunities that we've had. So a lot of my presentation is going to focus on the experience that we have had in terms of government agencies coming together and some of the challenges and what we need to work on together to be able to move forward. So I will look at the existing partnerships, of course, in Uganda. What are some of those MDAs or the ministries, government departments and agencies that are currently collaborating or working together? And then look at some of the partnerships. And then, of course, the opportunities or the benefits that we've had arising from this partnership. And then I'll have a brief about some of the challenges that we are seeing, and then a few parting shots. So in terms of the partnerships that we have had across the ministries, the departments and agencies in Uganda, these are some of the areas that we've been able to have a partnership on. The first one is what Madam Mercy, our Registrar General, has talked about, what we call the Tax Registration Expansion Project, in brief, what we call TREP. TREP, the main objective of TREP was to facilitate the coordination and the formalization of businesses, particularly relating to the informal sector, to be able to formalize the registration for tax collection purposes, but then also for other benefits. In Uganda, we have a challenge of the informal sector, where a lot of our traders, a lot of businesses indeed are outside the formal sector. And yet they contribute, or if we're to bring them into the formal sector, we believe that we'll be able to get a significant revenue. So this was the basis of let's get entities together to be able to collaborate and see how best we can move forward in terms of making progress. So the specific objectives for this project was, first of all, to reduce the time and the cost of compliance for the business entities, by simplifying the processes for registration. Registration is very key for Uganda Revenue Authority because this is when you first interface with the taxpayer. But many times, and of course, like most of the government agencies, most of our processes indeed were complex. So it was not easy for somebody that is operating at downtown to be able to get to the website of URA or to be able to come to the URA offices for registration. But then, of course, as well, it was in the aim of how do we make or how do we have systems that can be simple for the ordinary person to be able to comply and register for tax purposes, but even for the company registrations, really, like Mercy has said. The other objective was to harmonize the tax administration systems and enforcement. Within the different participating agencies is that we all had our own enforcement mechanisms. You had the Bureau having its own processes, you had Uganda Revenue Authority having its own different enforcement processes, and yet we were all looking at more or less the same person. So the issue then was, why can't you come together as government agencies and have one system that where you're able to go out and enforce all at once? The other objective was to link the business registration, the database of all these collaborating institutions. Because we are all operating, we all had our own different systems, information all demanding for the same information more or less, but by different entities. So this was creating a burden really in terms of complying or in terms of enabling our people to be able to comply. So the one thing then was, since you have all these online systems, why don't you actually have some integration so that you're able to pick information that is useful? And like my friend Mercy has mentioned, is that when they're able to interface with the URA system, for instance, you are able to verify the payments that have been made. That is very key for purposes of ensuring that you first of all eliminate fraud, but then also it is easier. You do not have to ask somebody to go to URA to be able to verify that, because instantly, if the systems are working or they are talking to each other, you will be able to simply click and be able to verify that information without necessarily having a separate process for verification of the information that is with another government agency. So that linking of these registration databases was very key in terms of going forward. The other bigger area, of course, as well, was to educate and sensitize the public on their rights and obligations and create awareness. Yes, there are different government agencies with different mandate, but then at the same time is that you're looking at the same person. They must all comply with the rights and obligations arising from the different laws. And we saw that there are benefits in having to have these joint campaigns. So we had one of the objectives indeed was to go out as a government body with these different agencies, but to be able to reach out to our traders, to our taxpayers, and be able to sensitize them. And we have seen a massive improvement in terms of the awareness campaign, and that has been very critical. And then, of course, lastly, it was to enhance the capacity of these institutions to be able to appreciate the roles, the responsibilities of the mandate of each other. That is very important, because as government, yes, you all operate, you're all one government. But remember, you have different systems, you have different mandate, you're even set up by different laws. So it was important for us as well as government to come together and say, yes, this is what we do. Then how can your mandate, how can it help? For instance, how does the mandate of the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, how is it beneficial to me as a person who is in Uganda Revenue Authority? So in understanding what actually happens in Uganda Registration Services Bureau and the other entities is very helpful if you're going to make an impact in terms of going forward. So this particular project at the TREP it was set up to handle those areas, and I can assure you, as you will see in the presentation, is that we've been able to achieve the benefits or the objectives for which this program was set up. The other partnership that we've had, of course, is at the One-Stop Center, of course, at Uganda Investment Authority, which was also created to integrate services of the key government agencies with an online platform that is going to enable our investors to access government services using a single point of entry. This as well was a pain because we had investors coming in, but they all had to get services from the different agencies, from the different bodies. So having that one-stop center was very beneficial in terms of helping our investors, but also being able to explain to them the different roles and then enabling them to comply with all these requirements, but at a single point of entry without necessarily having to go to the different government agencies, which was very good. And of course, as a result, we have seen lots of improvement. We have seen the ease of doing business improving, but we have also been able to offer a lot of advisory services to our investors who are coming in by using this single point of entry. And then, of course, we have the one-stop shop at Uganda Registration Services Bureau that Madam Mercy has ably talked about, so I will not belabor on that. As well, we have had system integrations or interfaces between the different MDAs that I've mentioned. And these are some of them. For instance, we have with the Uganda Police, we are able to have traffic express penalties. These ones, the systems are integrated. We also have an integration with the insurance regulatory authority for stamp duty purposes. We also have, of course, with NERA, we are sharing information for registration purposes. The information with NERA as well is very helpful in terms of tracking down other taxpayers, but even at the point of registration, because you already have this information within the different systems. Within NERA, they already have this information. So when a taxpayer is now registering for tax purposes, we already have that information within our domain, and we'll simply ask for maybe some additional information, but a lot of that is already within the system. So then that makes it easier for the taxpayers to be able to get their registration fast enough, and as you will see, of their benefits that have been registered as well. So in terms of the partnerships here, I must say that as government, we are making an effort. These were good starting points. There's a lot more, of course, that we can't do, but as a result of the benefits that we are seeing, we can ably ride on these to be able to continue making improvements and partnering more as government agencies to deliver services to the people. So in terms of these benefits, yes, I've talked about the partnership that we have had as ministries, the departments, and the agencies of the government. And these are some of the benefits that we have seen in terms of the partnership and why it is important, really. I will not belabor on so much on this point, but it is very important that as government, we collaborate more. And this is, these are some of the benefits that I'm going to highlight. One, of course, has been the rise for the TREB project, which I talked about, is that we have been able to see a rise in revenue. From Uganda Revenue Authority, of course, our mandate is to collect our revenue. So even in coming out with this partnership, the main focus is that we must be able to see an improvement in the revenue that is being collected as a result of the partnership with the different agencies. So as you can see on the slide now, I have tried to show you that these participating entities that we have had through the different years from the financial year 2014-2015 to 2020-2021. You can ably see we have, of course, the Ministry of the Local Government that was also participating in this program. The first two financial years, they were not part of this, so that is why there's no number. And then the next column is what we have, the Kampala Capital City Authority as well, collecting some dues coming through. And then, of course, we have our very own, the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, and then the Uganda Revenue Authority. But if you look at that slide, you will be able to see that all the financial years, indeed, we have had a significant improvement in terms of the revenue that has been collected as a direct result of this partnership under the TREB. And we are very happy because this is why it was partly set up, to be able to make a difference or to be able to have significant revenue coming through as a result of the partnership. And we are glad, and with all the support indeed from Madam Mercy, with your team, you have done very well, as you can see the numbers, and even all the other participating entities. So we believe that this collaboration indeed was something that was worthwhile in terms of the investment and going forward. The other benefit, of course, that we had was the ease of doing business initiative. These services were brought closer to the clients through the creation of the one-stop shops. This is very important because if you picture different taxpayers having to move from one office to another, it is costly, it is complicated, but then also it deters people from being formalized. So in having this is that we realized that indeed the ease of doing business was improved and people were able to access the services that were brought closer to them. And the other important benefit that came through was the turnaround time. And for me, that is one of the biggest pains, really, that people had previously. Through this collaboration with these entities coming together under one roof, we saw a lot of improvement in the turnaround time for some of these key processes that were giving clients previously a headache, but through this interaction and collaboration, all the days are indeed improved and were able to offer services in time frames that had been time frames really that previously we thought were impossible, but through working together and the different agencies coming through, we're able to see that indeed this can be achieved. For instance, if you look at that table, I've also given a highlight over some of the processes. Processing a tax identification number for an individual. The target test was 2 days, but even now, if all the information is available, this can even be concluded in a period of just 1 day. Now, that is a significant improvement because previously you would actually take about even a whole week or 5 days before you could get this number. But this has been made possible because you already have most of the information, like I said. So it is much easier now to process the information from the clients and then be able to process and give them the TIN which they require for other business purposes. So this turnaround, if you look at even, for instance, a business registration number, that as well has improved. You can actually get this in 1 day or even in a matter of hours. But this is really as a direct result of being able to have most of the information within your domain and being able to process and serve our clients. So this has also had a direct impact on the service delivery of the different government agencies in being able to offer services to the people. And this is what we are looking at. This is what we want to aim at, to be able to continuously improve so to make it easy for our businesses to formalize, but then also make them get to these services and experience or have better experience in dealing with the government agencies. So some of the opportunities, what are we looking at now really? It is that awareness creation. The increased public awareness about the mandate of the different MDAs is very key because this is what is going to increase registration. It is what is going to directly increase at the collections that we need as Uganda Revenue Authority. And through these joint awareness campaigns, we have also seen a lot of benefits coming through. The campaigns that we run as not just as Uganda Revenue Authority, but with the different MDAs in government, is that they have been very impactful. Even with the surveys that were conducted, indeed people were in agreement that they now knew about the different mandates of the different agencies as a result of them coming together and being able to cooperate and work closely. The second opportunity, of course, is the expansion of the registers for the different MDAs. The registration function at Uganda Revenue Authority is very key. Right now, we have a tax register of only about 1.8 million. That register needs to grow because one of the biggest problems that we have now is that we have a lot of people indeed who are off the radar for tax purposes. We have, and yet they are trading, they are earning income, and they should be within the bracket. But that is not possible. So we must continuously work with the different MDAs. And for me, this opportunity of being able to collaborate is one of those areas that we are looking at. Because then we have third-party information that we in Uganda Revenue Authority do not have. So for me to increase my tax register then, if I am going to get onto the system of Uganda Registration Services Bureau, I will be able to pick information of people indeed who are not on my register, and yet they are actually on the register of my sister agency. So that is one of the areas that we need to focus on, and we are analyzing all the data that we have within the collaboration and integration to be able to pick out those areas or pick out people that should be on these registers and that they are not. So there's that big opportunity that we have, that we are working together and making sure that the information that is available is indeed utilized. And the same thing will go for the company register at the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. Through this collaboration, the register should also be able to grow. And then, of course, the license register at the KCCA and the local governments as well ultimately should also be able to improve as a result of this partnership and the closer collaboration with the different departments. And then, of course, the third opportunity is that collaboration as well among the partner institutions. As you've seen, the mandate is different, but we all have one ultimate aim, and that is to improve the services. We need to be able to get to our people. We need to be able to deliver the services for which we are set up. But to be able to do that now is that we need to work together. We need to share information, data. Yes, I have talked about that. We are no longer in the days of having to walk through the different streets looking for people, because this information already is online. The information is within the systems. So it is upon us now, the different agencies, to see how best we can collaborate, how best we can work together to be able to share this information, and then ultimately be able to analyze the data that we have in the different systems for purposes of making sure that we achieve our mandate. So that is the other big opportunity that we need to work together and we need to build on, and not just stop at sharing data, but then also take it a step further by, for instance, looking at joint enforcement, which we are currently doing, but it is also another area that we need to continuously build on to make sure it is functioning. Enforcement, yes, for tax purposes, or even KCCA, or even the Bureau, you cannot do away with enforcement, because yes, you must use a carrot, but at some point now you must use the stick. So the enforcement comes in to be able to send a message that is deterrent, but then also making sure that the different obligations are being achieved. And this is where I think another opportunity that we need to build on as government agencies, to be able to take it further and not just stop at sharing the data, but then also work together in terms of the enforcement and being able to make it easier to identify the potential clients for the different purposes. And then, of course, the next one is a collection of revenue. If we're able to collect, identify the different sources of our revenue. Right now in Uganda Revenue Authority, we have noticed that we need to improve our administrative efficiencies. It is not so much now about having laws that are going to introduce additional taxes, because that we have seen, it brings up a lot of complications. So we need to work together as well and say, within the different sectors, within the different sources or information that we have, how best can we utilize that to be able to make planning for tax purposes. And this is one area for us that we see is very key. And having this collaboration, the closer collaboration between the different government agencies, and through different discussions, we should be able to devise or identify other sources of revenue, rather than really looking at additional laws or additional tax policy measures, but focus a lot on what we can actually achieve within our systems. And then, of course, our staff capacity building. Capacity building is also a very key component of the collaboration between the government agencies. Yes, we all have, if we are going to go into joint enforcement, we need to be able to train or have a framework of training our staff where they're able to understand the mandate of each different agency, but then also seeing in a collaboration how best do they comply with that, how best or what skills do they need to be able to execute their mandate. If we are looking at joint enforcement, what should an enforcer do? What do they have to know if you're going to enforce for tax purposes, or if you're enforcing for maybe the license for KCCA? What are those things that you need just from the basic principles of the law? What do you need to look out for when you're carrying out this mandate? So this is another area that we'll continuously, of course, build on to make sure that we build staff, or we have a staff body that is able to understand what the mandate is of the different agencies and appreciating their roles to be able to move forward and work together in the closer collaboration. Having said that, of course, yes, the benefits are many, the benefits are immense, but in the collaboration as well, we have also seen a number of challenges which are coming through as a result of partnering with the different government agencies. And the first one I'll talk about is, of course, the timelines, because the processes are being managed by the different MDAs. We still have complaints of our clients coming through and complaining of our delays in certain processes. And we believe it will be cured at some point after understanding or being able to have integration of all the systems. But right now, because each entity has its own processes, some of them indeed are causing delays. Then we still have a bit of interference, of course, from the local and the political leaders in some of the areas, who really are, of course, they are people against paying of taxes, and they're a bit hostile really to our field officers. which makes it very difficult for them to execute their mandate or to even ultimately collect taxes in some of these areas. And then, of course, related to that is that you also have people that have intentionally decided to simply not formalize their businesses. And but I know that my dear friend, the Registrar General, Madam Mercy, is doing a lot to encourage businesses to formalize. And here I would also like to commend Mercy and your team for the good work that you're doing. I think you've put in place systems, your campaigns are very visible, to be able to try and show people the benefits of why they need to formalize. And I think for me that I thank you, Madam Mercy, and your team, because once we're able to achieve, or Ugandans are able to understand why it is important to formalize their businesses, then ultimately, even for tax purposes, that will give us some benefits. But I know that Uganda Registration Services Bureau indeed has done an amazing job, and Madam Mercy, well done. And we continuously look to you indeed to continue improving this process, but then also being able to rally our people to be able to formalize their businesses. Because ultimately, we need to get to a situation where Ugandans formalize, but that we are able to have on our radar all the people who should register for taxes. And here we'll just focus, of course, a lot on the taxes, because right now the tax register is one of our biggest problems, but we need to be able to grow that. And for me, once we have that formalization being done, or once we change the perception really, and I think a lot of this problem comes from the perception. We have had people say that once you formalize, or once you're able to get onto the register for URA, then that is the beginning of your problems. So we need to be able to do a lot to dispel some of those sentiments, to show them that there are certain benefits really, and that there is a cost for non-compliance. Some of these things, for instance, if you're going to bid for a big project and you do not have a TIN, or you do not have, or you have tax arrears with the Uganda Revenue Authority, then that will have a direct impact on your business, because most likely you will not be able to get that business going forward. So there are a lot of these challenges really, and for me it is just about the voluntary compliance. It is not so much that once you get onto a register, the government agencies are going to hold you. No. It is about being able to formalize your business. It is about, organizing your business in such a way that there is visibility. And once you're compliant, there is no need even for the enforcement, which I've talked about. Once you have you're compliant with your tax obligations, or these other government agency obligations, or KCCA, there is no way you'll be forced, or you'll get into the bracket of people who are being run after by our officers for enforcement. So we need to be able to dispel that, but right now we still have that challenge of people indeed, but I think it is a lot of sensitization that is going to help us to be able to encourage our people to formalize their businesses and register for tax purposes. Then, of course, the other bigger challenge we still have is the system downtimes indeed, which defeat, of course, the essence of system integration that is supposed to be seamless. Yes, system downtime, yes, for some of the systems, that is still a challenge that we are facing in terms of going forward. But this is also an area that with a lot of support, we should be able to deal with, and so that we have information flowing without necessarily having the downtimes affecting our service delivery. So with that, that was the end of my slide. Patricia, I hope I've not taken so long, but would like to thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. Would like to thank you for the partnership that we have had, and we look forward indeed to continue enhancing this partnership. For me, it is not enough that one agency of government is doing very well and yet your sister agency is struggling. But once we get together, once we put our minds together, once we have our staff working together, we should be able to register milestones in terms of going forward. I thank you so much for God and my country.
Thank you, Patience, for the clear and insightful presentation. Next, we're going to have Michelle Crosby. She's the Deputy Director of the Australian Registry Services. And in this role, she's accountable for running all the corporate and business registry services. Michelle is leading the Modernizing Business Registers Program, MBR, which is a transformative program of work across multiple agencies to build a new single registry service and make it easy for businesses to interact with government. The MBR program is also to deliver direct identification number initiative, which will provide traceability of a director's relationship across companies and to enable better tracking of directors and help prevent the use of fictitious identities. This will assist the regulators and external administrators to identify and investigate a director's involvement in any unlawful activity. Michelle has extensive experience in leading significant organizational reform and has held senior roles across the private and public sectors, including the Department of the Prime Minister and Cabinet and the Department of Human Services. Michelle holds a business administration master's and a master's in human resource management and a bachelor's degree in business accounting. Michelle, we're ready to hear from you. Good evening.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I'd like to start by commending the Commissioner and the Registrar General for their presentations. I thought it was fascinating to hear about the partnerships that you've been able to establish and the intersection with the taxation system and the registration system. So we've had a slightly different experience in Australia, but hopefully I can build on some of what you've already talked about. So thank you for those. So as was mentioned, apart from running our registry services today in Australia, I'm also responsible for a program of work that is modernising our business registry services. And that's really about providing a backbone for transforming the way that business will interact with government going forward, making it simpler and faster and easier to start a business and to run that business, and providing more opportunities to foster open data, which we've talked a lot about over the last couple of days, opening up data and driving innovation through that. We, in April this year, Australia brought all of our registry functions together and under a new Australian Business Registry Service, but we've come together under the Australian Taxation Office. So slightly different. We're not in a partnership model. We are actually under the Taxation Office, and our Commissioner of Taxation, I'm accountable directly to him. Our program of work sees us consolidate more than 30 registers onto one new modern platform, and that's registers such as our Australian Business Register that exists today, our Companies Register, our Business Names Register, and a whole range of professional registers. So fairly big undertaking that we have embarked upon. And for us, the registration part tucking under the Australian Taxation Office was really important. We have a concept that we look at in the Taxation Office around pipeline. We know that registering someone into our systems is the start of a pipeline or the start of their journey, often through the taxation systems and their interactions with government. So getting registration right up front is something really important to us, and we've had a strong focus on it. So our process will actually create a single view for businesses where an individual will tell us once and they'll update their record across the register. And that will provide a data spine or a single source of truth that can be used to connect government services. The Tax Office is the lead agency, but we are working across a number of government agencies to deliver these services, and we couldn't do that just by ourselves. In addition to combining our registry data onto the one platform, we've also got a number of other deliverables, including Director ID, and I'll just touch on that one now. I'm just checking if my slides are available. If they are, if we go to next slide, that would be great. Maybe slide 3. Perfect, thank you. So this really looks at some of our benefits and opportunities, and that's where director identification number comes in. So our first service on our new platform is introducing director identification numbers, and director ID is a unique number that directors of companies will apply for and they'll keep for life. All company directors, which in Australia we think is around 2.7 million individuals, will be required by law to come in, verify their identity and be issued with a unique number. And for the first time then, we'll actually have identity on the front end of our corporate and business registers So we'll know who sits behind a company and we can join the dots between the companies that they're involved with. Director ID for us will make it easier for regulators to detect and target illegal phoenixing activity or fraud. For us, illegal phoenixing in Australia is a significant issue. It costs our economy just over $5 billion a year and impacts on businesses, employees and governments. And so if you're not familiar with the term illegal phoenixing, it's a term we use in Australia where people who sit behind the company will wind a company up, leaving debts across their businesses and employees and indeed government, often to the ATO or Taxation Office, and then go and establish a new fresh company with the same people sitting behind it delivering almost the same services that was being delivered from the first company. And it is something that costs us significantly. We have designed our director identification number as a 15-digit number using ISO codes, but interestingly from the presentation last night, I think there was a alpha code being used for that to allow interoperability. We've used a 3-digit country code at the start of our number. So Australia is 036. So all of our director identification numbers start with 036 to signify that that is an Australian director identification number. We do expect that other countries may introduce director identification numbers into the near future, and we wanted to allow interoperability, particularly with our nearest neighbour in New Zealand, who we already have a range of functions in place with to allow businesses to operate between the two countries. We successfully started our director ID process last week, so we're about 10 days into it, and we've had overwhelming support from the community where we've issued nearly 60,000 director identification numbers in the first 10 days and lots of positive sentiment coming through. The interesting part for us around director ID is we are the first service that's using the Australian government's verification credential called MyGovID, which is an online credential. So people using their mobile phone can prove who they are using akin to a 100-point check of identity. And there's a facial verification service on that as well, which does a check back to their passport. And so that verification check is the new way of being able to do business with government in Australia, and it's a robust identity verification. It really makes it easier for clients to be able to verify their identity in real time, but it also is a very strong credential, and it does protect our systems and individuals against fraudulent behaviour. So director ID going well for us so far. As I mentioned, our registry brand, we are sitting within the Australian Taxation Office, but we do expect with bringing all of our registry services together that we'll be able to offer an improved service out to our clients. We are going to be focused on the quality and availability of registry data so that we can increase trust and confidence. Modernising business registers is going to give us a richer data set than ever before with that single source of truth, and being able to share that data with our partners across government is something that is going to be very important for us. Over the last 18 months, and we've heard this from other speakers, the need to be able to share trusted data across government is the need for that has been heightened. Through COVID, we have shared some of our registry data with over 100 agencies to be able to fast-track grants out to businesses that needed relief from COVID in the economy. And so we expect that through the work we're doing, we'll have an even richer data set going forward that will be able to connect more services across government. And be able to really simplify those business interactions for someone to be able to come to the one agency, tell us once, be able to interact once, that is going to free businesses up to be able to spend time on running their businesses and really thriving in what is challenging times, we know, for all of them that are trying to recover from COVID. For us, the new register also allows us to strengthen relationships. We've been able to address a lot of irritants that exist in the current registry business and to improve processes. We've been very focused on collaborating with our partners and a broad range of stakeholders, and that's really allowed us to get insights into where those irritants are and to be able to really actively address those in our new registry product. We might just go to the next slide. Next one. Thank you. With building any big registry service, there's a range of challenges that we have faced to date. The first one is around the business complexity. For us, migrating and combining the 30 registers, which some of those registers are up to 30 years old, have been built on quite aged legislation. So being able to look at how we migrate those registers, and it was interesting hearing, I think it was from Botswana last night, about how they've gone about migrating their registers. We are likely to take all of the data across into the new register so that it is available into the future. So bringing that together, trying to deliver legislative change at the same time to simplify the interactions. And so it's been a very complex process on that front. We're also dealing with age technology, where our registry business systems that are running today, we need to make sure that they continue to meet the needs of Australians while we can go about replacing those. So making sure that we're not introducing any risk through those existing registry systems. Like some of my colleagues that we've heard from over the last couple of days, the COVID over the last 18 months, border closures and travel restrictions have really hampered our ability to deliver on our program of work. I should have said up front that through our program, we are using the Foster More product as the spine of our registry business. Foster More located close, but not close enough when it comes to border restrictions, as in there in New Zealand, and our ability to actually have our staff in the same room to be able to design the services has been a little bit hamstrung through COVID and the border closures. Our ability to also, with not a lot of, virtually no immigration into our country at this point in time, with our borders international borders being closed, has really hampered our ability to get the right resources at the right time as well. And then managing expectations. It's been interesting where you're trying to bring 30 registers together that mean different things to different people. So trying to manage everyone's expectations as we've looked to deliver the program of work, and to actually hold people off while we've been able to get the spine in place. So everyone would like to put a new requirement onto our register, but we've actually got to get the basics in train first before we can then start to really run with any future requirements. If we can just go to the next and last slide, that would be great. Thank you. This slide really just highlights the number of businesses that we're dealing with and the processes that sit around our registry life cycle, and that it's a true end-to-end life cycle. We do have significant users interacting with it, and so considering all those users throughout the design has been critical for us. In particular for us, the majority of our services will be delivered through software. So through APIs that we will that will be consumed through digital service providers and made available to our intermediaries that like tax professionals and bookkeepers that support our business clients. So it's not, whilst we will have what we refer to as a retail offering, so a front door for people to come in and do business directly with government, we know that the majority of our services will be made available directly through software. And so we've been navigating both the software side of things, but that direct front door into government. We're about 18 months into our journey to transform. And while we've encountered some challenges along the way, we've also kicked a number of goals like the Director ID one and bringing all the registry functions together. For the first time in Australia, we've now got that one front door, even if it's not quite operating yet with the systems behind it, but we have brought all of our registers together, and I think we're well on our way to being able to simplify business interactions with government for all businesses going forward, and to really, through Director ID and the joining of the dots with the services, being able to protect Australian business owners and make it easier for them to really just get on with business, which is what they do well. So just conscious of time, I might pause there, and certainly happy to take any questions that people might have.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to all our speakers. Now we're going to go to the questions in the chat. The first is from Peter Benson. Our registry manager is concerned that system integration dramatically increases the risk and consequences from cyber attacks such as ransomware attacks. Has anyone considered mitigating these risks by using portable data transfer to synchronize structured data across the systems? Patience?
Thank you so much, Patricia. Indeed, when you're looking at the online systems, security of the data is one of those key risks that you must be able to take into account and devise a strategy of how you can mitigate the loss or attack of the information. And also because remember, a lot of this information indeed is very confidential. So you must have a system indeed that is able to give that comfort so that people can trust that this information is very safe. So within Uganda Revenue Authority and the entities that we are working really is that cyber security, that we have our IT teams really who are looking at this, and they are part of the teams that are under the project. So we'll have the project is structured in such a way that you have, yes, the technical people, but even our IT people really are looking at this security, cyber security, and making sure that the information is safe and that these systems are actually can be trusted was one of the things that we put up front when these systems were being designed. So I must say that from our side, really, or from the time that we had this integration with the government departments and the TRIP, that we have not had any incident of the systems being hacked into or information being put at risk. But of course, it is an area that our teams are constantly looking out for any threat. And so, Patricia, that is what I can say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patience. Now to the Registrar General, are there any privacy concerns that limit your ability to share information across agencies?
Thank you very much. Yeah, the Companies Act does provide for access to data upon request from the users. And like Michelle has presented and Patience, our data is used by millions of users or citizens or non-citizens, but also entities. And the way to access it is through a request, a formal request to the heads of those registries. And we also provide a platform for accessing just basic data. When you go to our website, there's basic data for registration that is availed at no cost. And this basic data is just the name of the entity, the registration number, the type, the date it was registered. But if you want ownership information, you have to request so in writing, by email or by physical letter, whatever is applicable, convenient for the client upon payment of such fee. And so all this data is open to the public. When you select to formalize the business, you have no option but to put your information out there for anyone to access, unless that information is going to be used to cause some insecurity or public order concerns. But otherwise, that information generally is available for the users upon request. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question for URSB and URA. Is this a two-way integration between URSB and URA, where URSB can verify deregistration for tax purposes to allow the removal of companies from URSB, and URA on the other side can access the information from URSB?
Okay. Patricia, are you speaking to me?
Yes, please.
Yes, that's a tricky question, but the information for deregistration can be accessed as well. Between URA and URSB, there are platforms for information exchange for all purposes. And definitely, as Patience mentioned, the URSB the URA database has around 1.8 million taxpayers, but I think this also has a component of individual taxpayers. Maybe Patience will explain that. And for us, our interest is the non-individual taxpayers. The URSB database has approximately 800,000 entities. Those are business names and companies, and should be ordinarily paying tax. But I don't think if you went to the records of Patience, that is the URA, you'd find that these registrations are not paying tax, and many of them are dormant. And the law does provide for how to deregister these companies, how to strike off these companies from the register. But for purposes of taxation, this information can be accessed, and the integration. And URA can access this data at any time, even through exchange of the API details, so that it can be accessed with ease, because we are here to share information for purposes of compliance and voluntary taxation and registration and licensing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe Patricia can also just make a comment. Thank you so much, Madam Mercy. Like you rightly said, of course, we have the relationship is a two-way. It is not just a one-way where one entity is getting information and the other entity is not getting the information. So between the URS system and the Uganda Registration Services Bureau, that we are able to see the information. And of course, our database has both individuals and then, of course, the corporate entities. So like Mercy has explained, of course, now there's information that we have that they do not have. But the most important thing is that we are able to see, yes, even if you have, for instance, a dormant company, and then the URA, we do not have any information to that effect. It is how best you are able to utilize that information to take a decision. That is very key, because we are going to use this data to be able to enable us, if somebody has said they have been out of business, but on Mercy's side, they're actually filing returns, then I should be able to ask questions before I actually approve a deregistration for that taxpayer. So what we are saying is that, yes, the systems are there, they're integrated, but we need to take it a step further to be able to analyze this data and use it for tax purposes or for these other registration purposes. So yes, the integration was a starting point, but through the engagements and being able to constantly check on the information from our sister agencies is what we are doing, and it is one of the things really that we are focusing on, to make sure that we utilize the information that we have within the different system. So indeed, yes, the question, yes, it is a two-way street. The information that both agencies are able to get it, but it is how best you actually organize your functions to be able to utilize that information for the different purposes. And we have seen a lot of, indeed, significant improvements coming through as a result of, for instance, being able to just check with the Uganda Registration Services Bureau about an entity that has, for instance, not been filing returns. But then from our side, indeed, this company is telling us a different story. So through that, and of course, they've also realized that now they are not simply going to rely on the information that is within our domain. Because one of the biggest challenges that we have as government is that you have limited sources of information. So to be able to have these platforms where you're able to cross-check the information that is being filed to another government agency is very critical, and taxpayers are beginning to feel that indeed, yes, with this closer collaboration, it is important to give the same information to the different agencies of government, because now they have a system indeed where they're able to cross-check the information that is availed. So yes, this information, it is a two-way. We are working on that collaboration, but it is hub-based indeed. We scale it up to be able to utilize that information for the different mandate of the different entities. Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Patience. There's another question here for you. Are there limitations within each agency that restricts the visibility of data being collected? Are there specific boundaries that staff have in accessing cross-agency data being collected? There are two questions actually.
Thank you, Patricia. So of course, the information is available to the staff. The information, there are no boundaries that if you are staff of these different agencies, you have that mandate or you're authorized because you represent or you have the powers to access the information. What is restricted is sharing this information for other purposes that is not directly in line with your mandate. For instance, if you're going to get the information that is for tax purposes, you've gotten it from the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. We do not expect that you're going to use this information other than for tax purposes. So, but once the staff, of course, overstep that mandate and there's evidence that this information maybe has been shared with a competitor, because I think we had one of such incidents where information that was got from the different government agency was not used for tax purposes, and the staff shared it for other reasons. But once we got that evidence, that became a disciplinary matter. So the only disclaimer really, or the only limitation is that once the staff get this information, then it must be used for only tax purposes or for the mandate for which that information has been got. But in terms of our restrictions, there are no restrictions, and they should be able to get this information once they are authorized to perform that function. But of course, also to note is that within the different agencies, for instance, in Uganda Revenue Authority, not every staff is actually authorized to access this information. So we have particular staff, by virtue of their deployment, they are authorized to get into these databases and be able to get that information, which they will then use for a specific purpose for which they were deployed. So that is the only limitation, really, that yes, the information is available, but you must restrict it to the specific purpose for which you have got. And that is very important as well, because what you want to do, and I think Michelle talked about it, is that you must create, there has to be trust. There has to be trust that this database or the information that is available is not going to be misused. Is that once you then get instances where people feel the information is not safe, then these are some of the things that will be very challenging, but there will also be a setback to these projects. So it is important to build that system where people know that the information is safe, irrespective of which government agency, that even when you're sharing it, they will not steal. It will be just for specific purposes for which that entity was set up, without necessarily having to worry what the information they need will be used for. Because I can also give an example. I talked about the interface with our NERA, that is the Registration Bureau, the National Identification Registration Authority. That information, or that information that is held in NERA database, is very confidential, because these are details about individuals, really. So to be able to use that information, or to be able to have that interface where you're getting that information, is that you must make sure that your staff are able to hold this information in a confidential manner, and that there's no leakage, that even then, whatever information comes through, really, it is still it is trusted. You can trust the source, but then also the taxpayers or the individuals will not feel that their lives are at risk or that the information will indeed be leaked to third parties. So that is what I can say for now. But it is very important, and I think we have put safeguards in making sure the information that is got is indeed kept confidential for only specific reasons for which the different agencies were set up for. Thank you.
Thank you, Patience. Now, over to Michelle. There's a question from Peter Benson. What is the separation between the country code 036 and the director ID number?
Yeah, so I think, Peter, if I've interpreted this one correct, so a 15-digit number, we have 036, we have 11 digits, and then a check digit. So what we've done in terms of formatting the number is formatted it in the three-digit country code. We've got a series of 5 numbers, a space, 5 numbers, and then 2 numbers at the end. We really wanted to, given it was a long number, we wanted to make sure that it didn't look like a credit card number, which is your series of 4s. So that is the format of our direct ID number, and happy to share more information on that.
Okay, thank you. There's another question from Claude. Does Australia have foreign companies? If so, how are the directors of these foreign companies accommodated for the direct identification work, especially relating to verification and face identification?
Yeah, really good question. So we do have the concept of foreign directors, and a relatively small percentage of people that will need to apply. So for anyone who can't meet our current online requirements, we do have 2 other options. People can apply over the phone and prove their identity over the phone, or predominantly for foreign directors, we have a paper-based form for foreign directors to use, where they will need to establish their identity in doing that. Over time, the Australian government has been exploring whether we can introduce a credential that will cater for foreign individuals. But at the moment, our MyGov ID or our verification system is driven predominantly the facial side of the Australian passport system. So I think that's a watch this space. We will be able to do more of these transactions online going forward. But for the moment, foreign directors do need to apply using paper. And I think so far our statistics are that we've got about 97% of people using the online system to get their director IDs, and just under 3% using the phone and paper channel.
Thank you, Michelle. There is a comment from Peter. The ISO 800116 prefix identifies the country, but also the actual registry. Each registry in a country has its own prefix. The alphanumeric prefix also allows the use of the ISO country code and the acronyms currently used by countries to identify registries. Thank you, Peter, for that comment. There's another question here to the Registrar General and to Michelle. The focus of this panel has been making accessible data between agencies within a country, but for registration of foreign companies, do you check directly with the Registry of Domestic Registration to verify the information before registering and renewing its foreign registration in your registry?
Okay, thank you, Patricia. The verification of data for foreign entities takes different forms, whereas the Companies Act does provide for registration of foreign companies within the country within a specific period of time from the start of their business. When there's need for verification, we rely on the certified documents that are submitted to our office. And what we have done from the experiences is that whenever there's need to verify data, especially for entities that are non-profit making, for entities that may be also caught within the compliance scope, we engage the embassies or the permanent missions, but there should be systems on verification through integration of data between all registries where necessary. But this also has been enabled through the relationships that we have built over time through the Corporate Registers Forum, that if there's any entity that maybe is incorporated in New Zealand and needs verification, it's a matter of sending an email to the New Zealand registry of companies to confirm that that company is registered within that country. The cost of verification, especially where there's need to do the assessment before registration, may be high, so it is better to use the online engagements and systems and these relations that we have created over time to get the necessary verifications done. So in summary, there are measures for verifying information with the digitization and automation, and this bridging of gaps between the corporate registers. It's very easy for us to get information on registered entities that intend to register within our countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Registrar General. Michelle, how does your registry verify foreign company information?
Yeah, so we very similar to what the Registrar General has talked about. For some countries, we have data exchanges, particularly with our New Zealand colleagues, because that is the a number of New Zealand companies will trade in Australia as well. So we have data exchange processes for our New Zealand colleagues, but we would be reliant on foreign companies that are registering in Australia to provide us with the required documentation in order to register, unless we've got the data exchange processes in place.
Thank you, Michelle. There is one last question for the Registrar General. It has been noticed that the replication of data, which could have been addressed through integration of registries to ease retrieval of information, is your national ID office integrated with URA and URSB and related agencies to enable ease of sharing of information?
Yes, thank you for that question. From my presentation, I indicated that the National Identification Registration Authority is one of the agencies that are integrated with Uganda Registration Services Bureau, because the business register has owners, the owners that are behind all these businesses must be on register, they must be existent, they must not be fictitious. So we have to verify the identities of the people that are behind the registration for purposes of traceability, for purposes of transparency, and verification of ownership, but also to handle the beneficial ownership component. And so we are, yes, integrated with the National Identification Registration Authority. We are integrated with Uganda Revenue Authority, among other entities that we're integrated with. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish to thank all the members of this panel for the insightful presentations you've made. It has been an opportunity for the members to learn on what the different countries are doing on sharing data between governments, all aimed at easing doing business for our clients who are our ultimate beneficiaries. Thank you. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for that perfect job done to moderate the discussion. Many thanks to the Registrar General of Uganda Registration Services Bureau, Ms. Mercy Kainowisho. Many thanks again to Patience from the Uganda Revenue Authority. She's a Commissioner Legal Services and Border Affairs. And many thanks to Michelle Crosby, the Deputy Commissioner and Deputy Registrar of the Australian Business Registry Services. To you, our colleagues and friends joining us online, please note that the next session will be on updates from international partner registry organizations, which should start in the next 10 minutes. So you will be required to log out of this session and then log into the next one. From all of us here, thank you for tuning in and have a good day further.